So what will the political fallout of this tragedy be? Discussing this with me now, Fox News contributor DeRoy Murdoch, also contributing editor to the National Review, and Ron Meyer, political analyst for Media DC. Ron, you know, it's a part that comes with all of these. In fact, it's almost instant, the finger pointing, but it does feel like every time we are getting closer to some sort of definitive action that may cut across both sides of the political aisle.
Well, that's what we have to hope for. And really, the last couple hours have been made a big impact on what the politics are, because we've really seen that there was a large part that was a failure of the FBI and the FBI's processes in flagging this. Someone had reported this this guy before this happened, and so why wasn't this sent to the Miami office? Why was this failing? But if you look at the broader picture of what we can do to stop all of them, there are other things that I think have bipartisan support, like reforming the NCIS system, which is a background check system, adding more days when someone gets flagged to actually do these investigations, using more data. There's more data to be gathered as far as people who might be flagged, and those are things that I think both sides can agree on. I think what will really Republicans need to do is be very solution-oriented, and not just say we're going to do nothing, we aren't going to respond to this, but actually take a really proactive approach to it and say, no, there are things that we can do that actually cut across both aisles, right, which, by the way, include school security, include these background check systems, include some other things that do make common sense and that can move the solutions that could stop this in the future.
You know, I was on a board of a charter school in the South Bronx, and you go and there's metal detectors, there's security guards. I mean, the thing is like a fortress, right? And it's unnecessary. It's unfortunate that it has to be that way, but it has been effective. I don't know that every school, particularly in a wealthy, safe area like Parkland, Florida, wants that to be the reality, but there will be new realities.
Well, look, this is a pretty affluent neighborhood. Columbine was an affluent neighborhood. Sandy Hook was an affluent neighborhood. So the idea that this only happens in crime-ridden neighborhoods is not the case, at least in those three instances. You know, we have that saying, if you see something, say something. We need a new rule among the police, which is if you hear something, do something. And as we've heard over the last couple of years, but how the FBI really dropped the ball on this, that's incredibly dispiriting. And I think people really need to be sent back into the private sector, the ones who are responsible for this and blew it.
DeRoy, what about mental health? Isn't there some unity around that? I mean, isn't that something everyone can agree on? Some sort of mental health litmus test, not. I know it's scary, you know, that the government, you know, we don't necessarily want the government deciding who's mentally fit or not, because you want to talk about politics, but there should be some obvious cases where there can be action taken.
I agree with you. I think a lot of people on the left get very nervous about that, and when there have been efforts to add mental health to the sort of screeners we use to determine whether people should or shouldn't buy guns, they get a bit fidgety. There is also the question, what is mentally ill? I mean, if you take Adderall, does that mean that you can't buy a gun? I mean, where do you draw the line? But I think certainly if you've got something approaching criminal insanity or deep paranoid schizophrenia, that at least ought to be noted somewhere.
Right. Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there has to be, like I said, the way we collect this data for the background check system does need to be updated and changed, and does need to include some sort of mental health element. Now, how do you gather data? How do people report these sorts of things? I think people are reporting these more and more now, especially that people are being educated to do so. But when something's reported, what happens after that? How is that checked into? Those are also, by the way, not easy policy decisions, but those are the discussions we need to have. I'll tell you, here locally where we are in an affluent area here, but we've added school security. We actually have armed police that go from school to school on a rotating basis. To get into the school, someone has to be able to visually identify that you're supposed to be there before the school door even opens. So there are things that communities have done, and this is, by the way, something that's been recent in the last few years because of these things. Yeah. So communities can respond. There is national policy changes that can be made that are bipartisan.
And say something, having law enforcement take action. Also, we have to make sure we protect people that see something and say something too, because, you know, retaliation by a known brute is a certain deterrent for a lot of people, particularly young kids. Gentlemen, thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.